Army and the Navy, and we create two bases. And the Army has Rockwell Field, and they are training their aviators. At the same time, we train ours at Naval Air Station San Diego. So here in San Diego is where it all began. Here, a few years later, we have the first aerial refueling. We have the first transcontinental flight in 1923. Okay, we started Lindy's flight originates out of here, 1927, okay, this famous flight. 1928, we have the start of our first aerial demonstration team, the Seahawks. Okay, they later become the Blue Angels and relocate to Pensacola. We have our first jet squadron here in San Diego. We have our first jet night landings on the Valley Forge out of San Diego. Our first carrier, okay, is out of San Diego. So San Diego is associated with most of naval aviation's first. And in 1961, to settle a dispute between Pensacola and San Diego, who was really the birthplace of naval aviation, Congress made a resolution that said, resolved, San Diego, North Island, is the birthplace of naval aviation. Pensacola, you can call yourselves the cradle. Okay, and that's where we get those terms, the cradle of naval aviation down in Pensacola. It's actually from the congressional record. So starting this next year, we're going to talk about naval aviation. We're going to talk about all the accomplishments. We're going to talk about the Battle of the Coral Sea. We're going to talk about the Battle of Midway. We're going to talk about Korean War. We're going to talk about our first helicopters. Okay, 1943, when we got our first H-5. Okay, we're going to talk about the contributions of our maritime force. We're going to talk about it in a context that pays tribute to those that paved the way and created our heritage. We're going to do it with dignity, we're going to do it with respect, and we're going to do it nationwide, and it's all going to start here in San Diego. Because this is where it began for naval aviation, and this is where it deserves to start. On USS Midway, there's going to be an open house at North Island, and there's going to be celebrations at the Air and Space Museum. There's going to be lots of events, and then we're going to extend that throughout the year. We have lots of air shows that we typically have slated every year anyway. So what they're doing is they're adopting the theme, the century of naval aviation, so that we can talk about the contributions of naval aviation and what it's done for our Navy. So what has naval aviation done for our Navy? The Navy that's influencing coalitions and controlling the sea lanes. Well, if you can influence an area that you can see, then how do you extend the effects? Okay, then you do that by extending a greater area you can see and apply effects. So we've taken aviation from dirigibles and biplanes to monoplanes, okay, to what we know as very enduring World War II types of amphibian and carrier-based aircraft. We've extended that through the Korean War with helicopters, jets, and now we're at the point where the Joint Strike Fighter can reach out well over 600-mile radius from a carrier. So all of those units that are overseas are able to influence or affect a bigger area. Eventually, we're going to get into unmanned aircraft. And we have Scan Eagle right now, and we're expanding with VTUAV and the U-Class demo, unmanned carrier-based aircraft. And it's going to extend our range even farther, out to over 1,000 miles. So that's what naval aviation has done to enable and enhance our Navy to do its two primary missions. We've seen it in World War II, the significance of having sea battles where the two opposing forces, at least underway, never saw each other. Okay, very significant. Now we're providing effects overseas in Afghanistan where certainly the folks on the ground don't know what hit them. Okay, we've got aircraft flying off the Lincoln and the Truman right now overseas. They're providing about half of the combat sorties and about a third of the close air support for our sailors, Marines, and soldiers on the ground in Afghanistan. Very significant contribution. So let's take a look and walk around the fleet a little bit and talk about the health of the community, and then I'll transition to some challenges, and then we can open it up for some questions. Naval aviation is very healthy right now. Okay? We're healthy because the folks that preceded us were smart enough to anticipate a need to transition and to make sure that we have a new type of platform that will keep us relevant, meaning we're survivable in a highly anti-access environment with the same kind of capacity that we need to be overseas, present, and to generate the right number of sorties. So almost all of our type model series are in the process of transitioning to a new car smell. We've got, on the helicopter side, we're taking 7 different type model series and we're transitioning them down to 3. Okay, we're maintaining the 53s right now, but we're taking all of our utility helicopters and our ASW helicopters and transitioning them to either an H-60 Sierra or an H-60 Romeo. We've got about 300 of the 60 Romeos that we intend to procure and about 275 of the 60 Sierras. This is very significant if you're a ship driver because on a lot of these ships, your helicopter or your aircraft are your only weapon system. Okay? That is your primary weapon system. It's your eyes and your ability to defend yourself. So if you're an LCS person, then you absolutely are relying on a 60 Romeo or Sierra for your combat capability. In the maritime front, we've struggled with an old P3, and this is an area that we looked at recapitalizing in the early 90s. We thought we could take risk. We took too much risk, and we decided that now is the time. And we're capitalizing on the P8, which is a derivative of the 737. And I think it's going to be very successful. We've got the first 3 test aircraft that are at PAX. We're taking an aircraft, a 737, and we've all flown in those. Very, very reliable aircraft, very well known. Over about 6,000 or so have been built, so we're taking advantage of a very mature production and artisan line. And then we're going to make about 117 of those. Okay? And we start transitioning into those soon. We'll have our first squadron stood up in 12, and then they'll IOC in 13 and be ready for deployment. So we're very, very excited about that. On the electronic attack front, we have old prowlers, okay? And that's a skill set that we think we absolutely need to maintain. Electronic attack is a Navy core competency, and we intend to maintain that. But we can't maintain it on an older aircraft that's just too hard to sustain. So we've asked for more EA-18 Growlers. We've got an additional 26 in the last procurement cycle, and that's our plan. So we'll be out of the older aircraft in about 2015 to 2016. Our E2s. E2s have been around for a while. We keep trying to improve them with upgrades, and we knew that it was time to go to the next generation of capability, and that's exactly what we have. Last summer I was at the rollout in Norfolk for our first E2D, and we intend to have those squadrons transition by about 2015, and then they'll finish in the late teens. So that takes you to the fighter world, okay, our strike fighters. Replacing those, as you say, that are museum pieces or soon-to-be museum pieces. We have about, between the Navy and the Marine Corps, we have about 1,100 fighters. Okay? And that sounds like a lot. And it is a lot, and that's enough for today. But what that number doesn't tell you is that a lot of those aircraft are very old. Okay? A lot of those aircraft are beyond their service life. Okay? They build an aircraft to last a certain number of hours, and then through analysis we determine that, well, we think we can get a little more, or maybe even a little bit more than that. So we've taken a 6,000-hour airplane, made it an 8,000-hour airplane, through more inspections made it an 8,600-hour airplane, and now we're trying to make some of our old F-18s as much as 10,000-hour airplanes. Okay? That's costly, it takes time, and it doesn't always work, because when you open things up, just like in an old car or an old vehicle, you discover something that you didn't anticipate. What we need to transition to quickly is the Joint Strike Fighter. Okay? And we're anxious, and we think the first Navy version will be at Pax River on Saturday, we're anticipating. Okay? Soon. We have the first half dozen of the Marine version that's already at Pax River. So we're very, very excited and committed to that program. That program won't give us the squadrons that we need to start replacing into our air wings until about, we'll transition our first squadron around 2014, and then around 2016 we'll go on deployment. So there's a few years between now and then. And in the meantime, we have a hot production line from Boeing with the Super Hornets, the E's and F's, the Rhinos. Okay? And that's always been our plan, is to have one hot production line for our fighters that we could rely on while we were waiting for the next generation. So we were replacing about half of our 44 strike fighters in an air wing at any given time. So we think we've got a good plan. We know that if we don't act and get the Joint Strike Fighter and do what we need to in terms of making sure we extend some of our older fighters, then we're going to have a shortfall. But we think we've got it under control, and that's basically the landscape. Now, what I haven't talked about is things like the C2, the COD, Carrier On Board Delivery, and we'll recapitalize that probably in the late teens. The takeaway for that is twofold. One is that if you're a JO, if you're a new person coming, if you're Shaky J coming right out of flight school, okay, then you've got a lot of things to look forward to, because no matter where you go, you're going to get some new car smell. So pretty exciting stuff. Okay? And we can be thankful for our predecessors that had the foresight to lay in this kind of development work and to team with industry to make sure that we had this in front of us, and we started into a production now before the real pressures hit on our budget. And that's what I want to transition to now, is our challenges. Our biggest challenge, my number one challenge, well, I should say my number one priority, is always taking care of people. Okay, that underlies everything we do. But if that's an assumption that we're always going to be focused on taking care of people, then what we need to do is make sure that first, that we're fighting the war. Okay, that we're organizing, training, and equipping folks overseas, carrier air wings, helicopters, maritime aircraft, to provide what we need for the war fight. Okay, that is our number one priority, and it's something that we can never lose track of, that we are at war. I get the defense news notices daily throughout the day that show the fatalities. Okay, that show our soldiers, Marines, and occasionally our Navy and Air Force brethren that are casualties of the efforts in Afghanistan right now. So that is most important to me and our number one responsibility. Beyond that, one of the things that we need to make sure that we continue to do is to work through this challenging budget environment. We know that there's going to be pressure. As a taxpayer, we know that things are going to get more challenging in the future. So we're always looking for efficiencies. We're looking for ways that we can provide the same kind of effects, but maybe